Here we go. So this is section 4.4. Factoring. Now, we're going to do some of the steps today, and I'm going to do the rest of the steps tomorrow. If you recall, there are two parts to it. The ones we're going to do today are factoring when A equals 1. So when we have a quadratic equation, right, we have ax squared plus bx plus c. And in this case, our a's are going to end up to be 1. So that's what we're doing today. Well, it will be. Okay, so those are the first 6 steps is all we're doing today. Yeah. I haven't even written one yet. Step 1, you're going to undistribute the greatest common factor. You always have to take out the greatest common factor. You need your very first term to be a positive 1, if at all possible. Okay? Step 2, you're going to draw the x. Remember those wonderful x puzzles? We miss them, don't we? Step 3, we're going to fill in the x. Okay, to fill in the x, on the top is a times c. So the coefficient of the front number times the last number. On the bottom is your b value. Step 4, solve the x. Remember, it has to multiply to the top and add to the bottom. Step 5, if a equals 1, write your factors. If a doesn't equal 1, then we're going to have to go on to those next steps, and that'll be tomorrow. Okay? So we're starting off really easy for our first day back. You have half days next Thursday and Friday. Next Thursday and Friday? Like when the semester ends? Why? Because that's when exams would have been. Oh, so we're just doing half days. Well, I didn't say that. Do we need half that class? It depends. All right, so let's start off with an easy one. I'm going to ask you to factor x squared plus 5x plus 6. So step 1, you take out the greatest common factor. Is there anything in common in the whole thing? Well, there's not an x in the last one. Okay, so we don't have a greatest common factor to take out. Step 2, we draw our x. Step 3, last number times the first number. So 1 times 6 is 6. The middle number is 5. We need 2 numbers that multiply to 6 and add to 5. What are they? 2 and 3. Now, since our leading coefficient, our a value is a 1, we can write our factors. Our factors are whatever our variable is, right? And a positive 2 for this one, and a positive 3 for that one. I like the box. And then times them. Undistribute? Yes, that's going to become... I mean, when you multiply them together? Yeah, that's multiplying them. We'll get there. All right. So do you vaguely remember this? Okay. Example number 2. Let's factor negative x squared minus 5x minus 6. So again, step one is to take out the greatest common factor. What can we take out of every one of those? A negative 1. So I'm going to put a negative 1 out in front. If I take a negative 1 out of the first term, I get x squared. If I take a negative 1 out of the middle term, I get positive 5x. If I take a negative 1 out of the last term, I get a positive 6. Then we draw our x. Last number times the first, or a times c is 6. Middle number is 5. 2 and 3. Yes, absolutely. 2 and 3. Hold on. So, since our leading coefficient inside our parentheses is a 1, we have x plus 2, x plus 3, but we can't forget that greatest common factor in front. It has to join down here and put a negative 1 in front. Example number 3. How about negative x squared plus 13x minus 12? First step, we take out the greatest common factor. In this case, a negative 1. You want this term, if at all possible, to be 1, right? We can, just a minute. So we're going to take out a negative 1 because we want this first term to be positive 1. So I'm going to undistribute a negative 1. If I take negative 1 out of the first term, I get x squared. If I take a negative 1 out of this term, I get minus 13x. If I take a negative 1 out of this one, I get positive 12. Now I draw my x. 12 times 1, because this is a 1 right here, goes on top. Middle number is negative 13. So I need two numbers that multiply to 12, but add to negative 13. Negative 1 and negative 12, I agree. Now, since my leading coefficient is a 1, I can write my factors. I have x and then minus 1, and I have x and minus 12. And then this negative 1 that's in front goes right here. We've got to make sure we have that.
So if it's negative,
because you want your leading coefficient to be 1 if all possible. Okay? Keep going. Oh, right there. So 28 should be down here. Example 4. All right, let's try another one. How about let's factor 4x squared minus 100. Greatest common factor is what? 4. Very good. So I'm going to undistribute a 4. If I take 4 out of the first one, I'm left with x squared. If I take a 4 out of negative 100, I'm left with negative 25. Now I draw my x. Last number times the first, and my first is a 1, so I get negative 25 on top. What is my middle number here? 0. Good. So what are the sides? Would that multiply to negative 25?
oh wait, no.
Negative 5 and positive 5. So our factors would be x minus 5 and x plus 5. And then what do I have to put in front? The 4. Does anybody happen to remember what we called this? This was one of your vocabulary back in Algebra 1. D. It was the difference of squares. Difference of squares. Every time you have subtraction of two squares, so x squared minus 25, you get x minus 5 and x plus 5. You can just write them down. Okay, that's the difference in squares. It's one of those ones we end up using a lot. Example number 5. All right, let's go with, let's factor 2c squared plus 4c minus 126. First of all, greatest common factor. What can we take out of all of that? Good. We're going to undistribute a 2. So that leaves me with c squared plus 2c minus 63. Now we draw our x. Negative 63 times 1 is negative 63. My middle number is 2. So I need two factors that multiply to 63, or negative 63, and add to 2. Good. We practice these forever. Uh-huh.
Well, you just like know that on the top of your head, like.
Two factors of 63? Yeah.
I can't even multiply without my fingers for 9.
All right. So since my leading coefficient again is a 1, I can write these down. Now my variable this time is a c. So I have c minus 7 for the left side, and I have c plus 9 for the right side, and of course, I undistributed a 2. We have this? Okay. Just a couple more and I'll be done. Yep. Example number 6. What if we had something like, I want you to factor w squared minus 4w. First step is to take out the greatest common factor, which is what? 1 what? 1w we can take out, right? I can take out a w out of both of those terms. So I'm going to put my w in front. If I take a w out of this one, it leaves me with w. If I take a w out of this term, I'm left with negative 4. Now, is that still a quadratic? No, my w is only to the first power, right? So since it's not squared, I'm done. Once this gets to the first power, you can't factor it any further. You are done. Okay? Huh? There's a couple. So I wanted to remind you of that little fact. All right, example number 7. Let's see. Let's go with, we're going to factor. Need one a little bit tougher. Let's see. How about negative x squared plus 3x plus 40. All right. Greatest common factor is what? Good. Leaves me with x squared minus 3x minus 40. In my x, what number goes on top? Good. What number goes on the bottom? Awesome. So two numbers that multiply to negative 40 but add to negative 3. Good. 5 and negative 8. Nice job. I don't know who said it, but awesome. Okay. So then, since our leading coefficient again is a 1, we are going to have x, and this side is plus 5. We have x, this side is minus 8. And of course, my greatest common factor is a negative 1. All right, so if you're struggling with the x, okay, if this top number is negative, that means your signs have to be different, okay? Yep. All right, so then you go through all your factors. 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 5 times 8, Is there any other ones? I don't think so. Oh, 4 times 10. Yeah, 4 times 10. So then, since one sign has to be the opposite, you got to look to see which one subtracts to give you 3. That's all it is. Right there. Okay? All right, any other questions? All right. So today's, you are doing page 221, and only page 221. It's only the first half of the page, and we're doing 14 to 36 even. All right? Most of the time, you're just on distributing a -1. A couple times, you're taking out maybe a little bit more than that, but that is it for today. We're starting off easy.